Welcome to this edition of Rattling the Bars, a show that amplifies the voices of people who are disenfranchised, marginalized, and subjugated while offering solutions. I'm your host, Mansa Musa. The powers that be say that we don't have political prisoners in America. They say this isn't a country where people are imprisoned for their political beliefs. But I can tell you from firsthand experience, the reality is very different. Recently, I spoke with Josh Davidson and Eric King about a book they have co-edited entitled Rattling the Cages, All Histories of North American Political Prisoners. This book brings together experiences and wisdom of over 30 political prisoners in North America. Josh Davidson is an abolitionist who is involved in numerous projects, including the Certain Days Collective, which publishes the annual Freedom for Political Prisoners calendar, and the Children's Art Project with political prisoner Oso Blanco. Josh also works in communication with the Zinn Education Project. Eric King is a father, poet, author, and activist. He's a former political prisoner who was incarcerated for an act of protest over the police murder of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, in 2014. He was held in solitary confinement for years on end and was assaulted by both guards and white supremacists. King has published 3 zines: Battle Tested, 2015, Antifa in Prison, 2019, and Pacing in My Cell, 2019. All right, thank y'all for joining me on this edition of Rattling the Bars. Josh Davidson and Eric King. Let's start off by talking about the book. The name of the book is Rattling the Cages, All History of Political Prison. That's right. All right. Why? Why this book? And, you know, you might have an audience might be like saying, well, it's hundreds of books or hundreds of memoirs, hundreds of narratives dealing with people that's locked up. Why this particular book at this particular time? Let's start with you, Josh.
That's a great question, and thank you, Martha. I think this is a book that needed to be told. It's a collection of almost 40 interviews with people that are in prison or have done time in prison for political reasons. And as with all people in prison, they don't tend to have a voice, and it's hard to get your voice out when you're in prison. And the interviews that we included not only show, love and compassion and like a depth of humanity, but also just nonstop resistance to the system, which I think is always inspirational and always needed. And I think that, it was an idea that Eric came up with from the very belly of the beast, from the inside of some of the worst prisons in the country. And I think he saw that humanity was still there and he wanted to capture it. But yeah, Eric, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
Right. And Eric, and because you both of us been in this space, Eric, I did 48 years prior to getting out. And we interviewed you and we recognized that, because of your commitment to freedom and justice and struggle, that you was ultimately locked up for being involved in the resistance movement. And then after getting locked up, because once you got in the system, once they got you in the system, they really tried to kill you. Their goal was to kill you. The fact that you're here on this camera is by all intents a miracle. Talk about why you thought that from your experience when you was in the system, why you seen the need and the necessity to like try to get this information out to society.
Our brother, and thank you so much for having me on as well. So when I was inside, I was reading a lot of books about political prisoners and about just prisoners in general, and like those books, they lifted me up. They gave me strength, like knowing that other people have been through certain things, that I'm not alone in this struggle. But I also wanted to learn more. I thought it could be really beneficial for the next generation to know that their elders went through similar things, but that also the prison system didn't crush us inside.
Right.
That we were able to grow as people, that we were able to grow as organizers, that we were able to have friendships and learn things, not because the prison system gave it to us, but because we took it from them. We
Right.
insisted upon it.
Right.
That we're not going to become these puddles of mud to be stepped on. We're going to become these tall oaks.
Right.
And I was like, Thomas Manning died, and I just remember thinking to myself, like, he had so much knowledge and wisdom, and it's gone now.
Right.
And I wanted to make sure that we could get that knowledge and wisdom from as many of our elders as and my peers as possible to share with the next generation.
And tell our audience who Thomas Manning was. So, because a lot of we don't take for granted that our audience naturally know who he is.
Thomas Manning was a political prisoner. He did approximately 30 years or so. He was a member of the UFF, and he was at ADX, also the Supermax, for a couple years. And he just got brutalized by the police for fighting against the apartheid system in South Africa.
Right, right.
He fought against that inside America, with Ray Luke and a few others. And his body got destroyed by the police, and he ultimately died of a heart attack at USP Hazleton in 2018 or 19, I believe.
Okay. And we want to send our regards out to his family even now. But talk about okay, now and Andrew, I see y'all had Andrew Davis write intro or to the book. And Andrew Davis, when they locked her up back in the 70s, they wrote a book called If They Come in the Morning by Angela Davis and Other Political Prisoners. And in the book, the resonating point you made, in the book, she made the observation that the type of camaraderie that grows out of the prison system when it comes to prisoners in general, but political prisoners in being in the presence of that environment. Josh, when you was interviewing, did you get that sense? Because I see the way you set the book up. You set it up like prison life. You identify the political prisoner. You set up prison life, politics and the prison dynamics, and looking forward. When in your interview, did you get that sense of like how related to each other in terms of the camaraderie that grew out of that wretched, decadent environment that we found ourselves in?
Yes, absolutely. And great question. Great question. And Angela Davis published that book, that collection of political prisoners, 50 years ago, and now we're publishing this one with a forward by her, and the struggle is still the same. And I think that we see that in all the interviews. Really, everyone kind of talks about not only the camaraderie that comes with doing time with fellow political prisoners and politicized prisoners, but also once they get out, working together through the bars, across the bars, to make changes happen and to make a better world. And I think that comes across really clearly throughout most of the interviews.
Right. And Eric, I know that, in your struggle, because like you said, you've been to ADX. You've been everywhere they could put you other than in the ground. And and I'm not saying that lightly, because
No.
anybody that know your story know that, and know that this was because of civil disobedience. This wasn't because that you went down there and the president of the United States said go down there, storm the Capitol, kill everybody. You wasn't with that crowd. You wasn't with the crowd that would that beat the police half to death. And the dude just got 5 years. A person that assaulted 5 people, police in the Capitol, was just given 5 years for that attempt to take over the country. But you sort to, matter of fact, I'm gonna let you tell your story about why you winded up in prison.
So when I first got locked up, I was locked up after the uprising in Ferguson when the pigs killed Michael Brown.
Right.
And in my city, I was an anarchist. I'm still an anarchist, and I participated in that sort of activism, like activism that I thought would build a unified community. And I saw a lack of concern or care when this happened. Like no one took to the streets, no one confronted the police. And so I went to Ferguson for just a couple of days and I saw what was happening down there. I saw the military presence, I saw the white power militias backing the police like they were just one family. And I saw the genuine hurt and rage in that community, and that affected me. Um, and so I went back to Kansas City, and I thought I need to bring awareness of what's happening to people in other communities because
Right.
it's happening in our community too. It's just not getting the news.
Right.
Police kill poor and black people everywhere.
Right.
So I thought the best way to get attention for that was to cause a stir. And so I took 2 Molotov cocktails and threw them into the congressional building of our local congressman, and I let it be known like this is a solidarity act with those that are fighting down the road in Ferguson. And I ended up getting 10 years in federal prison for throwing those bottles.
Right. Moving forward, we recognize that uh civil just I think Dr. King said that recently I read where he said that is we're obligated to respect just laws, but we also have a right to protest against unjust laws in any means that we deem necessary. So we recognize at that point it was an all-out war, and as it is now, it's all-out war on poor and indigenous people, black and oppressed people. And so your act in and of itself, they married 10 years as far as they thought, but let let you went down to the nation's capital. Let you go down to the nation's capital with Molotov cocktails, because remember they found Molotov cocktails down at
Yeah.
the nation's capital. And let you go down to the nation's capital, and you'd have got 5 years, or you would have got a Congressional Medal of Honor for being a
Right.
part of that attempt to overthrow this country. But let's unpack some of the political prisoners and some of the stories. Because I recall that I was in constant correspondence with Jalil Muttakin and Asudiade
Okay.
Kola back in the 70s. They had made a call for they was organizing to take the problem of the prisons to the United Nations. And so they was organizing all the prisons throughout the United States. And so our collective, the collective that we had in the Maryland Penitentiary, we took on the mantle to organize a protest simultaneous with everybody around the country and the world simultaneously. We had a designated date. So I was responsible corresponding with Jalil and Sudiad. One of the after that was over with, back in the 80s, they was bringing Laura Woodhull. They was transporting her from one point of the country to another point, and Jalil had wrote me and told me, say that it's a comrade coming to Baltimore, that she might need some help because they sent her to the Women's Detention Center. And so I did what I supposed to do in terms of have somebody reach out to her, let her know if she needed something. The fast forward the story when Eddie was me and Eddie was locked up in the institution. He said, yeah, I'm going on a visit and I'm going to see. I said, well, who you going to see? He said, I'm going to see Laura Woodhull. I said, oh, I know her, right? He said, well, how you know her? And I'm telling him about the story I just told y'all. And so we went down there and he told us, oh yeah, I know that comrade. Long fast forward, all of us was out and had the ability to be out. And Eddie had a thing called Eddie's Front Porch, where we used to come together and just politic with law, different comrades, right? How was when you interviewed Law, and then she's out doing some remarkable work up in New York. When you interviewed her, what was your takeaway, Josh?
Josh, real quick. What you just said, like that story, is the exact reason why I wanted to make this book. Like that sort of history, that's priceless and it's
Yeah.
so empowering. Josh, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. My bad.
Nah, you good.
Yeah, no, you're good. And Laura Whitehorn is an amazing person. She did, I don't know, 20 years, I think,
Yeah.
related to the resistance conspiracy case starting in the 1980s. And she helped co-found RAP, Release Aging People in Prison.
Mm-hmm.
I'd met Laura a few times before, especially working to get a lot of the elder political prisoners in New York out. like Jaleel Muntaqim, who you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned, David Gilbert, Herman Bell,
Right.
Seth Hayes, so many of them that rap helped to get out. Um, and also running into Laura and Susie at Red Emma's
Right.
with
Right.
Paul, with Paul Coates and then Eddie Conway over the years. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's just, Laura's a great one to to bring up as an example because she's just so vibrant and so full of stories of radical history, and
Right.
she's
Right.
such a like she's such a tiny, small person, but she's so
Yeah.
full of love
Yeah.
and anger at a system that is, like endlessly horrible to people across the world. And she does a great job also, I think, of just bringing the humanity into the prison system. And she talks about protesting on the Baltimore jail roof, and communicating with people out on the
Yeah.
street.
Yeah.
She talks about doing AIDS
Yeah.
work
Yeah.
with other political prisoners around the country in the '80s, and she hasn't stopped doing that work. She was involved
And that's
with Weather
and that's
Underground.
yeah, that's the good thing. And like right now, Eric, like you were saying, like you're in working in a law office right now, and that's the thing about uh in this book, the impact that political prisons have. Like Huey Newton wrote an essay, said, and we was talking about just off camera, wrote an essay in To Die for the People's called Prison Where is Thy Victory? And in his essay, he talks about how when people are in prison, you have two type of prisoners he identified. Two type of prisoners he identified. Prisoners that become politicized or already political when they go in, but or become politicized while they're in. And they talked about prisoners he identified as illegitimate capitalists that strive to uh, hold on to ideal of getting money, uh, having some type of prominence under the capitalist ideal. But at any rate, he's saying that the goal of prison is to change a person's thinking. It's not effective in any of that. And Eric, your experience, and talk about this here as you in your experience and some of the people that you ran across in the system that was politicizing other prisoners and how it impacted the presence of you and other prisoners had the impact in that environment. Talk about that.
So real talk, like most of my bids, I didn't have the privilege of running across other like consciously minded people. And it was difficult because we want to make a difference. We want to
Right,
fight against this system inside. You know that. And so you do have to put in a lot of patient work. You have to have a lot of hard discussions to get people to understand that, like, sometimes what they're doing inside is furthering the system. It's empowering the system. It's not
right,
empowering ourselves. Like, we're giving them bullets to shoot us with when we do some of this shit, as opposed to trying to tear down these walls.
right,
So I did have the chance to, I think, help radicalize a few people. Um, I saw a lot of solidarity inside, a lot of times where we were able to build relationships and then ride with each other against the system, whether it be hunger strikes, whether it be barricades, whether it be taking that team over something just. Um, and then I also got to meet a lot of people from different backgrounds that in the free world I probably wouldn't have met. Like
right,
that I was able to, a lot of people from Baltimore and DC, honestly.
right,
Uh, and then a lot of jihadi folks.
right,
Um, and working, like, getting to know other people's stories and getting to know like their lives and like their passions and hopes and dreams, that helps me be a better activist. Now, like, we can ride together as people, as opposed to like, I'm a political prisoner and you're a drug dealer. Now we can ride together on a common cause.
right,
We're just two men inside fighting for our freedom.
right.
So I didn't get a chance to meet as many. I don't think there's as many inside anymore as there was in the 70s and 80s. Um, but I got to meet a lot of really great people and have a lot of really great discussions, and like, hopefully, like, uplift consciousness and like help people move forward.
That's really what I wanted what I was really talking about is
Oh, here we go.
really your impact on because like it's that's the narrative of the book. The narrative of the book is, you lock people up. Fred Hampton say you can kill a revolutionary, but you
And
can't
kill the
kill a
spirit.
revolution. Right? You
Yeah.
can't kill the spirit of the revolution, but you can kill a revolutionary. But the impact, that's really what I wanted when what you had really talked about was your impact on people because
Mhm.
it's your consciousness that when you come in contact with people that it's your consciousness and your ideology, your perspective of what the system is and educating people on understanding that, you had the prison industrial complex, you got slave labor, why we not getting living wages because we're living in prison don't mean that we're not entitled to living wages. Them are the things that got people to start looking at in prison, to start identifying and looking at the conditions from out of a different lens, but they just start looking at it from a different lens because of us, because of the people that was in, and which to go back to you, Josh, in terms of what do you want the people to take away from these stories uh, and this work?
That's a great question, Mansa Musa. I think if nothing else, I hope that this book arms the spirit. I hope that activists and organizers and people in prison
Arms the
read this book.
spirit.
Yes, yes, and that's another throwback to the 70s and the 80s
The
and
book.
the movement then. Um, but yeah, I hope that people read this book and learn that there aren't monsters behind the walls, that there are
Right.
people fighting back against an unjust system, and that not only do they not deserve to be there, but we can learn from them and with them, and that we can grow together. We can make our movement stronger together. Um, and you brought up kind of the structure of the book and how it talks about prison life and politics and prison dynamics, and then looking forward. And I kind of, I did that in a way to make it easier to maneuver and to read through the book.
Mm-hmm.
But I also based it kind of on prison visits, and visiting all of these elders throughout the years and
Right.
learning from them, and just, and learning the history that they have, and also just how involved they can be and are in current movements too.
Right,
So
and I think that that's a good way to articulate that, because at the end of the day, you know, me and like I was talking about me and Dominique Conway, we was talking, and she was saying that, making the observation that, when you talk about revolutionaries and you talk about political prisoners, we got a humanity like everybody else, uh, and oftentimes it's not expressed, it's not being written about, because we're in like a artist type situation. We're in struggle. We like with Erg, you find yourself in ADX, you find yourself when isolated in a cell where they may bring these three races in there, uh, and they gonna try to do some unconscionable thing to your body, and you don't have no choice of being able to say like, uh, what I'm gonna do. You want to fight and die, like Claude McKay say, back pressed against the wall, dying but fighting back. But your book shows the humanity of political prisoners and revolutionaries, and that's something that we need to emphasize more. Eric, on in terms of like your views, what do you want our audience to know about you and the people that you left behind?
So when you say the people that I left behind, I'm going to talk about the men at ADX.
Okay, come on.
Because I really feel as if like the abolition community has kind of forgot about the Supermax folks. There's people locked down right now that have been locked down for 10, 15, 20 years at ADX, and a lot of them will never touch their family members again. A lot of them will never touch their wives, hold their kids. Some of them aren't allowed phone calls, they're not allowed visits, they're not allowed mail. Like that restriction there is so brutal that it can rip your heart out. But what
Mhm.
I see meeting these men is that like that resistance, that fire is still there.
Right,
Like there's a bro I left, his name is Shahid. He's from DC. He was one of Silk's homies out there, Wayne Perry.
right,
Uh and Wayne Perry also, honestly. But so this dude's been at ADX for 16 years. He's only 39. So that's almost half his life
right,
in a 24-hour lockdown. And the reason he's locked down is because he refused to bend a knee to these pigs.
right.
Um, so the resistance, the revolutionary spirit doesn't go away. He still reads Free Minds every day, like that organization from DC that sends in the magazines. Uh, these people still care. They still have hearts. They still have passions. They still have hobbies and joys. And we need to see that the prison system tries to take that away. Prison tries to crush these people. And it's on us, it's on the abolitionary movement to say, like, we're not going to give the government that power. we're not going to let you bury our brothers and sisters for decades. And we need to rise up and try to stand with these people, stand with everybody that's resisting the system.
Yeah, there you have it. The real news, Rattling the Bars. King and Josh Davidson. Thank you for joining me. We encourage our viewers and our listeners to reach out to political prisoners throughout the country and try to get a better understanding of what's going on with people that are in prison only because of their ideas. We found ourselves in this country one time where what you thought would get you locked up. Well, this is taking place today. We thank y'all for coming. We ask you continue to support the real news and Rattling the Bars. Because guess what? We really are the news. Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching the Real News Network, where we lift up the voices, stories, and struggles that you care about most. And we need your help to keep doing this work. So please, tap your screen now, subscribe, and donate to the Real News Network. Solidarity forever.